In today's video, we're going to have a comprehensive overview of LangChain. This is going to be a LangChain tutorial from zero to hero with an emphasis on no code. And what you're going to be learning today is what exactly is LangChain, why it's so powerful, and what can you do with it? We're going to be creating LangChain flows visually. We're going to be setting up and testing our LangChain flow. Then we're going to be creating our no-code LangChain environment. And later, we're even going to be connecting our LangChain flow that we created in one of the previous steps to Flutterflow, which is my favorite right now at the moment, no-code builder that allows you to build apps quickly and easily. And then we're going to be launching our LangChain connected Flutterflow app so that you can see how it works. And last but not least, we're going to have some final thoughts about everything that we talked about in this video, along with some interesting tips and tricks. Now, before we get started, as always, all the apps that I built on this channel, including the app that I'm going to be showcasing today, are available to view and or clone when you join our amazing Patreon community. And you can do that using the link in the description below the video. Now, you may be asking, what exactly is LangChain? But more importantly, what is so special about it? Okay, why should I be watching this video? And what will it enable me to accomplish that I couldn't accomplish before? Well, if you go into your ChatGPT, I'm using here ChatGPT 4. Maybe you're using ChatGPT 3.5, doesn't really matter. And let's say you type something like this: check my financial statements and tell me where I spent the most money last month. So if you type something like this, chances are you're going to get back something that looks like this. Okay, so in my case, I got back as an AI language model, I'm unable to access your personal financial information or check your financial statements. Okay, so this is the key here. And so if you type something like this, you're going to get maybe exactly this, or maybe a variation of this. Okay, so in the second part, it gives me some hints in terms of what I can do for it to help me. But the key point here is that it cannot access my data. It cannot access maybe my bank's PDF statements or my Excel spreadsheets. It cannot access my data that's personal, right? If you're using ChatGPT, the only data it can access is the data it was trained on, right? So this is like data across the internet, right? Chances are your personal like income statements or your bank statements or your company financials, they're not out on the internet. And so it was not trained on it. And as a result, it cannot give you like personalized, customized results, customized information. But wouldn't it be nice to be able to use the power of ChatGPT on your personal data and actually get some meaningful data analysis that's specific to you personally? Okay, so that's just one example of things that LangChain was created to help you with. Okay, and so if you Google for LangChain documentation, you're going to be on a page that looks something like this, and this is where you can learn exactly what LangChain is, why it was created, and what kind of problems it can help you with. Okay, so LangChain is a framework for developing applications powered by language models. We believe that the most powerful and differentiated applications will not only call out to a language model via an API, but will also be data aware and agentic. Okay, so these two are very, very important, right? So what is data aware? Connect a language model to other sources of data. Okay, so in our case, we can actually connect a language model, a large language model like GPT, to a specific data, right? To a specific source of data, which is very, very powerful. And be agentic, allow a language model to interact with its environment, right? So this is another one. Connect to the internet, do this, do that. There's so many things that you can do. Now that you understand kind of the main pillars about it, there are more things that you need to know. Okay, so LangChain is built using modules. You take different modules and you connect them together. So you can kind of think about it as using Lego pieces, right? These little pieces that come together, and the end result is that you have an app that can do, powerful things that each individual piece couldn't do on its own. Okay, let's take a look at different things, different types of modules, because this is important, right? You guys need to understand. So we have models, right? These are the various model types and model integrations, right? So something like ChatGPT, GPT 3.5, GPT 4, etc., etc. We have prompts, right? This includes prompt management, prompt optimization, prompt serialization. Very, very important. We have memory, right? Memory is the concept of persisting data between calls of a chain and an agent. Okay, LangChain provides a standard interface for memory. Okay, and we'll talk more about it when we get into the part where actually we're creating these chains. Okay, indexes. Language models are often more powerful when combined with your own text data. This module covers the best practices for doing exactly that. Chains go beyond just a single LLM call and are sequences of calls. Okay, so you'll be able to chain different things. Then we have agents. Okay, agents involve an LLM making decisions about which actions to take, seeing an observation, and repeating until it's done. Okay, so this is going to be interesting to you if you are someone who wants to build like an auto GPT type of app, right? So something like baby GPT, auto GPT, things like that. And last but not least, we also have callbacks. Okay, so here they have various use cases, right? So something like autonomous agents simulations, personal assistance, question answering, chatbot, querying tabular data, code understanding. So lots and lots of interesting use cases, right? This is obviously, just a very, very short list of, the amount of things that you can do with it. When you essentially chain everything together and kind of connect things as you see fit. Okay. So this is LangChain, okay? And so what's the next step? How do you use it? Well, you use it by using its API, right? This is a library that you can build code on top of it, and you can leverage this library to build your own, LangChain apps. And so if you click, for instance, interacting with APIs, you can kind of see what you can do, right? So for instance, we can click on summarization and you have a piece of code that tells you how to do it, right? So this is a bunch of code. This is actually Python code that tells you how you can leverage this library, this framework. So if you want to learn how the chains work, you can click on API chain and you have a piece of code that gives you an example of how to implement an API chain. Okay, so this notebook showcases using LLMs to interact with APIs to retrieve relevant information, right? So this is Open Meteo example, right? This is a weather app, right? So you can create a weather app. You can create a chain that answers, questions having to do with current events, right? ChatGPT cannot tell you what the weather is like. For instance, in Munich, Germany right now, right? It doesn't have data. It doesn't have access to the internet, but you can do that by building a particular chain. Now, you may be looking at this and you're thinking to yourself, well, James, this is all great and fantastic. And I'm sitting on the edge of my seat and I'm super excited, but this is code, James, and you have a no code channel. So I don't want to write code. I want to do this without writing code. Well, I got you covered. Have I ever let you down? Well, I got you covered. Okay. So all of this that you're looking at, this LangChain library framework that allows you to build these LangChain apps. Fortunately, you can do that visually. You can do all of this visually without writing a single line of code, okay? And you can do it all visually by utilizing this tool here called Flowise AI, okay? And this is flowiseai.com. This allows you to build LLM apps easily, okay? Open source UI visual tool to build your customized LLM flow using LangChain JS, written in Node, etc., etc. This is an open source tool that allows you to build your LLM apps quickly and easily. And so what I did was I took this tool and I launched it on the internet so that you guys can see how it works and how to build LangChain apps using this tool visually without needing to write any code. And so this is the app right here, right? I have it hosted on the on the server. It's available, for you guys to kind of play around with. And you have 3 tabs, okay? You have chat flows. This is where you create your own flows. But what's interesting about it is the marketplaces, right? So if you click on marketplaces, you can take a look at different templates that have been created for you guys already that you can simply duplicate and use that as a base for your app. Okay, so we have some simple ones, right? So this is antonym. Output antonym of a given user input using few shot prompt template built with examples. And I'm going to explain all of that. We also have more complicated ones, things like AutoGPT, Baby AGI, ChatGPT plugin, conversational agent, conversational retrieval QA chain. We also have GitHub repo Q&A. Okay, all of these interesting things. Okay, and so what you can do is, let's say you want to build a simple one. You just want to see how it works, right? Something like an antonym. You can click on it. And so when you click on it, you're going to see the flow, right? So we have 4 components here. We have a prompt template. We have something called a few shot prompt template. We have an open AI module. And then we have an LLM chain, okay? So if you want to use this template, what you need to do is you need to click on use template, and it's going to duplicate it onto your account. Now, I already did that, so we can just go back. We can go to chat flow, and we can click on this antonym, okay? And this is this flow right here. Now, let me explain to you what's happening here so that you guys can understand what's going on. The first thing I want to cover is this dialog box. This is a module, and in this case, this is an open AI language model, right? This is the company that makes ChatGPT, GPT 3.5, GPT 4, etc., etc. And if you want to use this module, you can simply click here. You can go into LLMs and you can use it, right? Right now it supports Hugging Face inference or an OpenAI. So you can just drag and drop it like this. Okay, so I'm going to delete it because we already have it. And once you have this on the canvas right here, you need to specify a few parameters. So like you need to put your API key, and you can get your OpenAI key by going to platform.openai.com on this page right here, and you can simply create a new secret key. I've already created my keys here, as you can see, and I'm using these keys right here. So I have this key, and I'm also specifying the latest model, which is Text DaVinci 003. And for temperature, I'm just using the default. In this case, it's 0. Okay, now that we covered this, let's talk about these 2 models. Okay, now when you're building apps that are going to be interacting with large language models, you can specify something called the prompt. Prompt can be very, very helpful when it comes to the model being able to understand the best way to kind of answer your queries. And for that, we have a prompt template, and we have something called the few shot prompt template. So we're using both, but the first thing is a prompt template. Okay, so here we have a word, and antonym is antonym. This is a template. And we also have things like, an input language. We can specify an input language. We can specify an output language as well. And then we have something called the few shot prompt template. Now, what is a few shot? Well, you can think of a few shot as your way of giving a model examples, right? You are giving the model various examples that it can use to get you better results. This is obviously optional. We don't need this few shot prompt template, but in this case, we're doing it, right? This is all part of this template in this tool. And as you can see, we have some examples. We have a prefix, we have a suffix, we have a separator, and we have this template format. The most important thing here are the examples, right? So in this case, we have a JSON formatted string, right? We can click here, and we have examples. So remember, we have this template here, and here we are using examples, formatted with this template, this word antonym. So if we open it up, we can see that if we give happy, it should answer with sad. If we give tall, it should answer with short. And that's exactly what it does. That's exactly what it's going to do, as you're going to see in just a second. Okay, so this is our few shot prompt template. This is optional, but it helps to kind of nudge the AI model to answer it in the format that you want, right? Very, very useful. And last but not least, we have something called an LangChain module, and you can also find it here. You can just search for chain, and you have it right here. You have various chains, but this is the one that's being used, the simplest one. Okay, and so what exactly does this chain accomplish? Well, it chains the prompt, in this case the few shot prompt template, with our LLM model. That is exactly what it's doing. And in more complicated examples, as we're going to see later in the video, you're going to see that you can use multiple chains in order to kind of chain different pieces together so that you can have a more powerful app. We're going to take a look at those examples a little bit later in the video. But in this case, it's a simple chain that chains this prompt to the model. And so now that you've designed the model, you have all the components together, you chained everything, you can test it out. And you have two ways of testing it out. The first way is by chatting to the model. And you can simply click here and you can start chatting with it. And so as an example, let's say I give it a word called excellent, and it should give me an antonym, right? I'm going to say excellent, and it gives me poor. Perfect. It doesn't give me any other text. It doesn't explain to me what is an antonym of excellent and, all this. It just gives me an answer. Let's say I type hot, gives me cold. Perfect. Perfect. Does exactly what I want. Let's say I type, gives me slow. Perfect. The second way that you can interface with this model, and this way is going to be important to us, is by using an API. And you can simply click here and you're going to be shown a sample request of how you can interact with this model. So you have three options. You have Python, JavaScript, and curl. Now, because we're going to be connecting to this model using a no-code tool such as Flutterflow in this example, we're not going to be looking at Python or JavaScript because we're not going to be building an app that connects to this model. But if you were going to build an app, maybe a Python app or JavaScript app, you're going to be looking at those examples. In our case, you want to look at curl, okay? And so here you have a simple request. This is how it's formatted, and you're going to send this JSON request, okay? You're going to have a question, and then you're going to have, the string that that you want to be sent to the model. In this case, give us an antonym. So you're going to say question, and you're going to have a word that you want an antonym of. All right. So what we can do is we can click here. This is going to copy this request. And as always, before I test anything, right, before I actually build an app, I want to test my API using a third-party tool. This is an optional step, but it's a step that I highly, highly recommend. And the tool I'm using is called Rapid API. This is a Mac app. It's a free app. You can just Google for it and you can download it. I use this app all the time. Okay. And so now what we can do is we can go into File, Import, Text. We can paste all of this, import, and it generates a request for us. I'm just going to put it up here. And now we have this request that has everything that we need to do. There's one thing that you guys need to do. If you don't do this, it's not going to work. Okay. Click on headers and type content type. You can just select this and type application JSON. You can just select that. Very, very important. Otherwise, it's not going to work. And so now we have our request formatted. And so you can go into body. And you can change this. So this model that we're working with is this antonym model. It's going to give us an antonym of the request. So this doesn't really make sense to send something like this. Hey, how are you? We're just going to say hot, and the answer we're expecting is cold. And so we have this request. So I'm going to execute it, right? Command enter, and we are seeing cold. And you can click here, JSON text, and you're getting back cold, and you can experiment with it, right? And we got back slow, and you can put slow, and you're going to get back fast. Okay. So this model works, and we can actually build an app that connects to this API and leverages the chain that we built, this LangChain that we built in maybe our Flutterflow app, which we're going to do a little bit later in the video. But before we actually build our Flutterflow app to take advantage of this LangChain that we've built, let me show you another model so that you have an understanding of how to build a model that does something else. So we're going to go back to our app. We're going to come back here. We're not going to save our changes. And here I have another model called Translator, which I actually got from our marketplaces, right? So we have this translator. I just duplicated it. As a result, I have it here. So I can click here. And this is the model right here. And in this case, we only have 3 modules, right? We don't have 4 modules that we had before because we are missing that few shot module. Remember, we had this other module right here in this antonym. We had this few shot prompt template. But in this case, we're not using it because while it's a very, very helpful module to use, it's not required, right? It's not required, but you can use it in order to fine tune the results that you're going to be getting. It's a great module to use. So in this case, we have a chat prompt template. We have our chat OpenAI module, and we have this chain. In this case, we're chaining this prompt template with this, with our LLM model. In this case, chat OpenAI. So we talked about this. Let's cover this real quick, right? We have this chat prompt template. We have a system message. In this case, it just, it specifies that you are a helpful assistant that translates input language to output language. Okay, so these values are actually gotten from this. Okay, so you can change all this. This is absolutely configurable. And this is the input here. This is the input that we're sending. Okay, so let's see how it works. We can just click here and we can type something that we want maybe to have translated for us from English to French. So let's say something like, hey, and now we have the direct translation. Okay, this is this French translation. Type something else, and this is the French translation. Okay, so we can also change the languages that we're translating. Let's say you want to translate to Spanish. I'm gonna save this, and now it's gonna be translating to Spanish, because once you modify this, it's gonna modify the system message. Okay, so let's say I type what time, and now we have the Spanish translation. Okay, and you can obviously continue to ask it more questions and give it more statements that you want to have translated into your target language, in this case Spanish. Now if you want to use this model through an API, which is what we're interested in doing and what we're going to be doing a little bit later in the video, you can simply click here, go into curl, click here to copy this entire request, go back to our Rapid API app, file, import, text, import. Now we have this new request. We're going to go into headers, and we need to make sure we have that important header there, right? Content type, application JSON, because otherwise it's not going to work correct. We're going to go into body and we're going to type a statement that we want to have translated. What time is it? Command enter, that executes it. And we have the response. ¿Qué hora es? You can enter something else. How do I get home? Command enter. And there you have the translation from English to Spanish. And you can obviously keep going. Now, once you have a functioning API that you've tested out and you know everything works, you've configured it, you send it various requests, you got various responses. This means that you are now confident enough to implement this API inside one of your apps. And this is exactly what I do, because I don't want to go and build my app right away. I want to make sure the API works. This is just from my own experience, okay? And that is exactly what I did. So I went into Flutterflow and I created a sample app that interacts with our models. Now, before I show you how the app works, let's go ahead and run this app so that you can see what the app does exactly, and then we're going to come back into Flutterflow, and I'm going to show you how to build this. All right, so we're going to create a new test session. I'm going to wait a couple of moments. All right, so here's our app. It's called LangChain Demo, and we have two operations that we can perform. And the first one is to get an antonym, which is going to use that particular chain, that particular API. And the second one is to translate something. Okay, so let's say we want to get an antonym, or press this, it executes that call. We get back slow. Let's say we want to do get antonym short. Let's say Y, get antonym narrow. And the second operation here, this is the translation. In this case, it's going to be doing it from English to whatever language that we specified last in the model. So in our case, if we go back, we're doing it Spanish, which is what it's going to be using. So in our case, this is going to be translating it from English to Spanish. So if I say, what time is it? Okay, and there you see it, ¿qué hora es? We can also say something like, how do I get home? And there you see it, okay? ¿Cómo llego a casa? So now that you've seen a quick demo of how to build apps that leverage LangChain, let's go back into Flutterflow and let me show you exactly how I built this app. So here we are back inside of Flutterflow. This is a very, very simple app, just one page. So we have an input field, we have a text field. Now, what is the button doing? Well, the button is actually executing API calls, and we have two API calls. The first one is called LC get antonym, which is long chain get antonym. And here we simply have a link of our custom hosted Flowise AI app. Remember, we're using this Flowise AI app to create these chains visually, but it needs to be hosted somewhere. Now, this API requires a body, right? This is a post method, so you need to be sending a body. And so we have this format here, right? We have a JSON request with one field, one value. The field is question. and the value is word. In this case, this value here, we want it to be set dynamically when the app is running. And that is why you need to come into variables and create a variable here that's going to hold the value and it's going to be dynamic. So we have a word, which is a string, and then you have access to this word. You can simply drag and drop it here, and you can create your request here, right? And once you have everything set up, you can go into response and test, and you can test it out. So let's say the word is awesome, okay? Test API call, terrible. Let's say the word is test API call, sure. And let's say the word is test API call, small. So it's working exactly as expected. Now, what's nice about it is that it gives you the result in the whole response body. So you don't need to have a JSON path to kind of fish out that specific text that you need. You don't need any of these paths or anything like that. You simply get the JSON body and you use it. And it's the same case when it comes to LC Translate, right? So if you come in here, we have our post request, which is that second model that we created, that second chain that we created. We got back this URL here, right? The model gave us, and then we have the body, and it's the same thing. Question, variables, question, and then we can have a response and test. So question could be, what's new? We're going to say test the response, and then you're getting back the translation. You can put something like, okay, and you're getting the response. And what's cool about it, and it's the same thing. You're just getting the response. You don't need to parse it out. You don't need to do anything. You can just get the body, which is this right here, and use it inside of your app, which is exactly what I'm doing. Okay, so if we go back to UI Builder, let's say this get antonym, open up. These are the flows. We're executing it. We're setting the word to the input, right? We're setting the word to our input from the widget state, right? Because, the user enters something in that other widget. We captured the input and we use that as the input for our call. Always succeeded, right? This is generated automatically. And once we get back a response, we simply update widget state with the response that we got. In this case, we're also utilizing page variables, page state variables, because we can't update the text field directly, right? We need to go through state variables. So in this case, what we're doing is we're getting back a response. This is this response here. I'm just using JSON body. We don't need JSON path or anything like that, just pure JSON body. And then we just set a value to result one. I just have two page state variables. I'm going to show you them in a second. Just result one, result two, just to keep things simple. And it's the same thing that we're doing with the second button, right? This translate, same thing. Go in here, open it up, making the call, update widget state. In this case, it's result two, body, that's it. And I have these two variables here, home page. You can just go to top level and you can go over here. This last tab, you're going to have these local page state variable. Result one, result two. That's it. These things are useful because once we get a response back, we need to set them here, and then here we just pull the variables automatically, right? So that's what we're doing. Is once, when you click on the button, it executes the API call, it gets the response, sets to that specific page state variable, and then this thing automatically pulls it. And remember, when we actually, when we have this call here, we're also rebuilding the current page. That's important because that page needs to be updated. That's exactly what it's doing here. If you don't do that, it's not going to be working correctly. So you need to make sure you're rebuilding the current page. And that's pretty much it, right? The hard part was actually designing the flows and setting everything up. The app is the easy part because in this case, all we're doing is, making an API call request, getting back the data and simply displaying it. But the hard part is actually designing the flows. Now, there are a couple of important things that I want to show you really, really quickly. The first thing is the various flows that you can create, right? So if you go back to our Flowise tool that allows you to create these LangChain flows visually, we were here. If you go into marketplaces, you can take a look at some of the flows that you can create. So here's AutoGPT, this flow right here. And I'm actually going to be doing another tutorial, another video on some of the more advanced flows. So I'm going to have another video in this series that's going to cover AutoGPT. I'm also going to talk about things like conversational agent. You can also do something like a ChatGPT plugin as well. I'm going to cover all of that in a future video. Now, the next thing I want to cover very, very quickly, that's very, very important, is that, remember, we're using this Flowise AI tool to create our flows visually instead of actually writing code and doing it programmatically, right? Visually is a lot easier. It has all the power of different modules, so you can create any kind of flow, all kinds of interesting chains to leverage LangChain for your specific app. But the thing about this tool is that, this is an open source tool and you need to actually host it somewhere. Now, I'm actually hosting this tool using a great service called Railway. And this is an amazing service that I use for different projects as well. I'm not affiliated with them at all. It's just an easy way to take an open source project and to put it out on the internet so that you can start using it. Now, while I'm gonna leave a link to this Flowise AI model that I'm actually hosting on my account so that you guys can play around with it. You can see how it works. You can just, try to create different LangChain models. I'm actually not sure, how long it's going to be available. I mean, it's going to be available today, maybe tomorrow, but, I can't guarantee that it's going to be available like forever. And so if you guys want to create your own host environment for this Flowise AI so that, it's created specifically for you and you can use it and create interesting models, interesting flows, I actually created a template that you can execute inside of Railway. So all you need to do is create your free Railway account. And I'm going to have a link in the description to a template that you can import that's going to automatically create your own Flowise AI environment in your Railway account. And they give you like some credits. And so if you're not using it at all, or you're using it a couple of times, you won't need to pay anything. Okay, so it's going to be absolutely free. So I'm going to have a link to a template that you can simply click on and create your own environment that you can kind of play around with. It's going to be absolutely free. You won't have to pay unless you're using it heavily, but it's a very, very competitive service. And so here's the template that I created, Flowise AI. I'm going to have a link to it in the description. All you need to do is click on it, create your free Railways account, and it's going to automatically create your own cloud hosting of this Flowise AI app that you can use for your own app. But for now, you guys are absolutely free to use my own hosted environment of this Flowise AI app. The only thing that you really need to do when you're designing your flows is that you need to enter your own OpenAI API key if you're going to be using these modules for processing and kind of understanding data, as I'm doing here. And so I'm going to have a link to my own Flowise AI tool in the description as well so that you guys can play around with it. But if you want to create your own personal environment that's always going to be yours and nobody else's, and that is something I recommend if you're going to be, building real apps using LangChain, definitely check out the link in the description that allows you to create your personalized hosted environment. Now, if you guys watch this video and you're thinking to yourself, I want to build LangChain models. I want to build my own chains. I want to build interesting apps. I want these apps to actually interact with data that I provide. And I want these apps to actually go out and maybe access the internet and do all kinds of interesting things. And really, it's up to your imagination, the amount of things that you can do with it. This is an absolute insanity. This is like a breakthrough that allows you to build like truly amazing apps. Then you definitely want to view and or clone the app that I built here in order to build apps on top of it and leverage this technology. And you can do this by joining our incredible, amazing Patreon community that's getting more amazing with every passing day. And when you join our amazing Patreon community, not only will you get access to all the Flutterflow apps that I built on this channel, so maybe you're looking for another app that I talked about in one of the previous videos, well, that's going to be available there as well. But you also get access to some extra content such as Q&As, live streams, behind the scenes content, as well as our Patreon supported masterclass series where I do deep dives of various topics that the community votes on. And in fact, very, very soon, I'm going to be doing either a Q&A or a masterclass episode on AI. Everything that you need to know, but we're afraid to ask when it comes to things like LangChain, building chatbots, etc., etc. So if you don't want to miss that, you definitely want to check out our Patreon community and consider becoming a member.